All right. Let's talk a little pigskin. Browns rookies reporting today, most of them. Rest of the crew will be rolling into Berea Monday night, Tuesday morning, and here we go. 2025 training camp will be underway. Lots of stuff, as always, going on with the Browns, but lots of stuff going on along the landscape of the NFL. Figured a good day, a great day to bring in Nick Shook from NFL.com here to talk a little pigskin with us on this Friday afternoon. Nick, happy weekend, pal. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Good, bud. Thanks for coming on. All right, we'll start with the Browns, and then we'll go a little NFL landscape, if that's okay. The quarterback room is cramped, okay? We got Flacco, we got Pickett, we got Gabriel, we got Shador, and number 4 seems to still be hovering around the building in some facet or another. Who escapes? Who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Browns in the season opener, according to you?
Well, I think the consensus, or at least the general thought, was that Kenny Pickett would get the first crack at the job. And if you think about it from a roster building perspective, you know you have a veteran Joe Flacco. He's the break glass in case of emergency guy. You don't know what you have in the rookies. You hope to find that out during training camp in the preseason. But the one guy with demonstrated experience with a longer shelf life, or more ahead of him in the NFL right now, is Pickett. So I think that's probably the guy that gets the first shot at it and has the highest possibility of getting the job. But, we're in July, so plenty of people are going to be talking about, is Shador going to get the job? Everybody loves Shador Sanders because of the family name and everything else. Dylan Gabriel, they traded up into the third round to get him. So what do they feel about him? What do they think about him that they felt they needed to trade up to get him when he wasn't expected to go that early? We're going to sort out a lot of this, but I do think that this is one of those rare cases in which you see them trying to create space to keep all 4, because unless you find a trade for, Kenny Pickett, say you realize he's not your guy and another team suffers an injury and needs somebody, or the same goes for Joe Flacco, I feel like you don't invest 2 draft picks and 2 quarterbacks and try to stash one in the practice squad unless he's just downright awful in the preseason and nobody wants him, just because the position itself is such a valuable.
As I was asking you that
from
question,
an outside perspective, but ultimately, I think when you look at it, you think, well, how can you not laugh at the fact that they have 4 options?
Right. I was chuckling inside as I asked you the question about who you think the starter will be. You know what? Shame on me. I think the better question is, who is number 2 and 3 and maybe 4 going to be? I think we're having a tough connection with Nick. We may have to call him back and regroup. I think we kind of lost him.
Now, you know what? I don't know if I can hear it. I think I lost you, Sam.
There you go. I think we lost each other, but I think now we're back. I don't know if you got my second question, but it was, as I was asking you about who should be the starter, I thought, wait a minute, maybe the better question would be who's going to be number 2 or number 3 or number 4? Yeah, we got a back connection. So let's hang up with Nick and let's.
Oh, now I got you.
There you go. Okay. Holy cow!
I everything you said over the last 15 minutes.
Are you at a Coldplay concert? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid the kiss cam right now.
So okay, I don't know what you got there, but I'll re-go one more time. When I asked you about who you thought the starter was going to be, I kind of stopped myself in my head and said, wait a minute, maybe the better question would be, who do you think the number 2, 3, or 4 quarterback will be this year, considering the incredible circumstances?
The initial, I wasn't at minicamp, but the initial impressions I heard from some of the people I trust most there, both on the beat and in the building, is I think Dylan Gabriel might be last in the group.
Ooh, okay.
And, it's the first of the 2 quarterbacks they drafted, but he's small. I liken him to a poor man's Baker Mayfield with less of an arm. He's mobile, which will always buy you a little bit more in terms of stock at the NFL, because if you're mobile, you can avoid rushers, or at least you think you would be able to, and be able to do a few different things. But I would put him last. I would probably put Shador third ahead of Gabriel. And then it's just a matter of, it's probably Flacco second, because again, you know what you have in him. Now, what you have in him is not the guy you saw in the back half of 2023. That was a season in which their defense carried them, Flacco had Amari Cooper to throw the football to, and he was able to step into that offense and make the most of what he had. But I think that was the peak, and the peak unfortunately ended in a blowout loss on the road in Houston on Super Wild Card Weekend, as it was then known. So I don't think you're getting anything better than that. And while, you talk to the average fan here, they get all excited about Joe Flacco being back with the Browns, and they remember that magical run he had. Don't expect that if you're a Browns fan, because I just think it's unrealistic. And I can point to last season in Indianapolis, in which he replaced Anthony Richardson a couple of times, and he looked old, he looked immobile, and he looked like maybe the game was starting to pass him by. I think that's closer to the representation of the quarterback you're going to get this year. So that's why I put Pickett in the lead job. But again, going into a season like this, you have a veteran on your roster for a reason, and it's so you can throw him in there in the event that you have to make a change or somebody gets hurt, and that's why I put him second.
Yeah, I would agree. I think people are going off nostalgia, Nick, for Joe Flacco. I mean, we got to be realistic about what's probably going to happen, but that's the way it goes. I was looking at Gabriel's stats: 18,722 yards, 155 touchdowns, 32 interceptions. This encapsulates 64 games, but then you got to figure in he did it with 3 different teams: UCF, Oklahoma, and Oregon. That's the way of the world again in college football. Is it easier or harder to make a read on his numbers, considering he did it with 3 different programs?
Yeah, I think that was the first point that I was going to make, is the fact that he went from UCF to Oklahoma to Oregon. It demonstrates some adaptability. I give him credit for that, especially when he came into the picture at Oklahoma. He was ultimately benched because they wanted to turn to Jackson Arnold, and that obviously didn't work out for them. But I thought he played pretty well there too. So, I mean, it's a guy who has succeeded in multiple programs. So you think, okay, maybe he'll be quick to soak up the offense like a sponge and be able to make a difference. It's just the physical limitations. Is that too much to overcome at the NFL level? That's where, it's not so much about distilling the stats, because college, you can have some crazy numbers depending on what offense you're in. I mean, you go run the old Mike Leach air raid offenses at Texas Tech. You got guys like Graham Harrell lighting up the stat sheet, never getting off the practice field in the NFL, who, by the way, had a camp with the Browns back in the day. So it's tough to put a lot of stock into their numbers at quarterback because of that. I just think more about versatility and adaptability, and that is one of the strengths.
Nick Shook is our guest, NFL.com. Check him out on X and all over social media. Then we come to Shedeur. Young fella goes from Jackson State to Colorado. Now he's with the Browns in the NFL. Obviously, a little bit of a jump there from Jackson State to Colorado. Of course, under the tutelage of his dad and playing with his brother, had a pretty good run at Colorado. Had a couple of good receivers to throw to, had a terrible offensive line. Defense wasn't great. But there's still this, what about Shedeur, that's kind of hanging over everything? And I'll admit it, sometimes I get caught up in it too, Nick. I'm like, hey, what about Shedeur? Maybe he's got a little something to him. How do you think this all plays out with him, not only this year, but moving forward, whether he is in the NFL, somewhere else, or out of it completely?
Yeah, I think it's fair to be curious about him. I mean, this is a kid who's been in the spotlight for the last couple of years, and because of his father, he's really been in the spotlight since he chose Jackson State, where his father coached. This is also the first time he's going to be playing football without his dad on the sideline. It's going to be an adjustment for him for sure. He's a marketable guy. You've seen that plenty in the social content that the Browns have put out. He's somebody who has absolutely, ingratiated himself to the community already in the short time that he's been here. But there is some intent with that. So that's all the off-field stuff. But what about Shedeur on the field? A lot of people made a big deal out of the fact that he didn't go until day 3 and that he, fell dramatically through the draft, when at one point we were talking about, is it Cam Ward or Shedeur as the first quarterback going off the board? But if you go back and check, some of the tape, the thing that I keep coming away with, the one impression, is that he doesn't do anything special or remarkably. He's just kind of, a guy who, succeeded at Division I, FBS with Colorado, and guys like Travis Hunter on his offense, and struggled when the offensive line fell apart in his first season there. And I just wondered, have we seen the ceiling? Does he have room to get better? Is it about being in the right system? Does he have anything that separates him from the average quarterback and the guy that, comes in the league for a few years, and that's that. And that's the thing that I don't really know right now. Based on the tape, I think his tape basically reflected where he got drafted. Now, maybe he could have been a 3rd round pick instead of a 5th round pick, and we could we don't really want to waste time on why necessarily that happened, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, he wasn't a first round pick. So the curiosity remains, and I think with this team, they have no clear options, so they can explore all that and kick tires in every single guy. But I think they made that pick without planning on making that pick. It's just that they got to the 5th round and he was still there, and they were like, hey, why not? 5th round is low risk. Might as well take a flyer on him. And so the Browns have that curiosity as well. But, I keep telling people that want to get behind it and everything. I got, walk around Cleveland or whatever, and people start throwing up their wrist, like doing the Shador with the watch and everything else. I'm like, hey, relax a little bit. Don't have high expectations for this guy because he may never, meet those expectations. Don't put too much on him just because his last name is Sanders. Let the kid figure out how to make it in the NFL.
Nick Shook is our guest, NFL.com. All right, Nick, let's go around the league here a little bit. TJ Watt got his money the other day. Now people are looking at Trey Hendrickson, Micah Parsons. Who's going to be the next to sign? What's the money going to be like? How do you see that working out?
Yeah, you could add Aiden Hutchinson into that group
Hutchinson
as well.
Too, right?
Yeah, he's got 2 years left in his rookie deal, so it's not as pressing of a matter. But the Lions do like to pay their guys pretty early when they know that they're going to be part of their core. We've seen with Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You can go down the list. They've paid a lot of them. Look, the Trey Hendrickson thing, I think it just makes it worse for the Bengals in that situation because Hendrickson has already expressed the fact that he's frustrated with the lack of a quality offer and the ability to really near a deal with the Bengals. He's spoken publicly on the matter multiple times. It's not a pretty situation. It's also not pretty from a football standpoint because they spent so much money to keep Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins.
Right.
They cut Joe Mixon to save some salary, which, you can say whether it was a good move or not, but I didn't like it at the time, and I still don't like it now for them, even given his age. And yet, throughout all of this, they have not invested in their defense. They've drafted in their defense a lot, but they've drafted a lot of traits guys, not a lot of production guys. Miles Murphy from Clemson's one. Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M is another. That's just like how their front office operates on the defensive side of the ball. So to leave your best defender, by far your best defender, a guy who led the NFL in sacks with 17.5 last year, unsigned to an extension when he certainly deserves it. He's got, 35 sacks over the last 2 seasons. That guy deserves to get paid. And to let this linger this long, let Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, and now TJ Watt all get paid to the tune of, $40 million a year, that's going to be expensive. And I think that, when you look at it on the surface, maybe you don't sign them to as long of a deal. They did clear enough cap space to be able to fit a comparable deal in there, but it's going to be tight up against the cap, which the cap is a myth in itself, but that's another conversation for another day. I just think it doesn't look good for their whole situation. So I would expect this to continue to drag out unless they relented and finally gave Trey what he wanted because he seems pretty dug in. And on the Parsons side, Dallas has made a habit out of waiting way too long to sign their key guys. They paid the price for it when they gave Ezekiel Elliott a bloated contract that looked bad in hindsight. The Dak Prescott thing, they let him, go through a franchise tag season. He got hurt. So, you don't want anybody to get hurt, but from a negotiating standpoint, that bought them a little bit of leverage and they ultimately got a deal done. But this is something that they continue to do habitually over the last few years. They just let these things linger and then pay a premium when they could have gotten it done at a cheaper rate before. And we're at that point now where it's obvious that's what's going to happen with him. And now with TJ Watt getting signed, the price is only going to increase further, especially for a guy unlike Watt, unlike Garrett, who is just entering his prime. He's coming off of his rookie deal. His resume already justifies top dollar. It's going to be incredibly expensive for them. And I think that that's a situation that we might see enter a Dak Prescott situation in which they might tag him to buy themselves some time to figure out a deal because I don't see them coming to terms on anything anytime soon unless they have a change of heart in the way that they operate.
Unbelievable. It really is. Let's go up to Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy missed last year. Terrible injury. He takes the reins now. QB1, McCarthy, Vikings. Nick, what do you see?
It's tough because nobody expected them to be who they were last year. Nobody expected that season from Sam Darnold. Nobody really thought that any of this would come to fruition, and yet the expectation is now so high because of what they did last year. And granted, they got better around J.J. McCarthy on both sides of the ball. I thought they improved. They had a great offseason. But they are putting all of their stock into a guy who has never played an NFL regular season game, a guy whose greatest claim to fame coming out of college is that he's a winner, which is great when you want to talk about intangibles, but I have a question about whether he's, actually a legitimate, NFL prospect. Physically, the ceiling may not be as high. So when I look at it from that perspective, I think, well, I have lower expectations. I think they'd take a bit of a step back. and they're still in contention, but that division's also very tough, and that's a lot to ask of a rookie quarterback. So, I hate to say it because Vikings fans will call me a hater, and I understand that, but I don't expect them to win 14 games this year and be the talk of the town like they were last year. But they'll still be competitive because they have a strong football team, a good head coach, a good defensive coordinator. They'll be all right. I just don't think they're going to be, quite the peak they were last year.
Nick Shook is our guest, NFL.com. I got two more quick ones, and we'll let you roll, my friend. Let's go down to Jacksonville now. Travis Hunter doing all the right things, saying all the right things. Really looks like he's impressed a lot of the guys that he has been in touch with camp, whatever was going on down there. How do you see his first year going out?
I think it's going to be quite an experiment because unlike other two-way stars in college, this is a guy who's actually expected to play on both sides of the ball. How much? I don't know. I don't know what the distribution is going to be. I would think they'd lean defense first and offense second, but he's such an athlete that they're probably going to try to pair him with Brian Thomas Jr. in that offense, in that receiving core, and really give Trevor Lawrence some weapons to work with, especially with Liam Cohen, now the head coach, after he just oversaw a tremendous season from Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers. So I think it's going to be a fascinating thing to track year long over the course of the season. But at the same time, for as many snaps as he played per game, which was an absurd total at Colorado, the NFL is a different beast. So I can't imagine that he would play full time on both sides of the ball, but you will see him on offense sometimes. And it's going to be something that I think will capture our attention for a good portion of the season. And he's a heck of an athlete on both sides of the ball. He's just a great player on both sides of the ball. He will make a difference, but I do caution Browns fans, since we are in Northeast Ohio here. I think the Browns made the right decision in not drafting him because they're not equipped to maximize his potential. Not saying that Jacksonville necessarily is, but to get the haul they got back for that was a wise move on their part. And you can watch him, try to figure it out in Jacksonville instead of being the team that's got a bunch invested in.
I would agree. Good call there. All right, there is a team, Nick, that I don't know, man. I am super intrigued. Geno Smith at quarterback, Ashton Jennings in the backfield, Brock Bowers at tight end, Chip Kelly, the coordinator, Pete Carroll, the coach, the silver and black. What can we expect out of them this year out in the desert?
If you ran down your list that you just listed, you missed one position group, and that's my biggest concern. It's receivers. They had the smallest receiving core after getting rid of Devontae Adams in the NFL last year. They did make an addition there, but that's going to be my big concern with them. However, having the quarterback, that's what they've lacked for so long. So it brings instant credibility and watchability to the Raiders for the first time in quite a while. They have a reason to feel pretty optimistic. And pairing Geno with Pete Carroll, I think, is going to produce positive results. I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're going to win the AFC West because it's a tough division. You got the Broncos, you got the Chargers, and you got the Chiefs in there. They could finish in last place, but it could be a competitive last place for all I know. Bottom line, it gives you reason to watch the Raiders, which is more than we could say about them over the last few years.
All right, I got about 45 seconds. I got to get this one in here real quick. Lloyd Howe announcing his resignation yesterday from the NFL. There seems to be a lot of rocks in the bucket here with this decision and what's been going on maybe behind the curtain the last several weeks and months. Nick, what's going on there with Lloyd Howe and the NFL and the NFLPA? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a bit of a tumultuous time for the PA in general. And, ESPN's report kind of dove into what allegedly may or may not have happened with him that may have led to his resignation. If anything, looking at it from a PR standpoint, I think it maybe settles the conversation around the PA a little bit. I think that this is far from being sorted out. But yeah, it's not ideal. If you're JC Tretter, it's not an ideal situation to be in, looking at, his role in the PA and everything else. But again, if you point to, labor relations with the league, they have had a lot of labor peace since that lockout, that kind of lockout. It was not I wouldn't call it a full year lockout because it wasn't. They ultimately figured it out, but they weren't able to, be in the facility for a good portion of that period. We are nowhere near that with the most prosperous sports league in America. They're in a much better place, but hey, nothing goes perfectly smoothly, so they'll have some things to sort out.
Nick Shook, check him out at NFL.com. NFL.com. Nick, always appreciate you, brother. Thanks for coming on. Happy NFL season to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. Nick Shook, there he goes.